Sometimes life delivers its most devastating revelations through the most ordinary moments. Charlotte could never have foreseen that a routine Saturday morning task would become the catalyst for the complete transformation of her existence. While performing the simple act of preparing Michael's clothes for washing, she was about to stumble upon something that would irreversibly alter her world. For 2 decades, she had constructed what appeared to be an ideal existence, a harmonious family unit, a home radiating with affection, and daily patterns that seemed to pulse with contentment. Every dawn brought with it the absolute conviction that she knew intimately the man who lay beside her each night, that they shared all confidences, that their shared story was transparent with every chapter authored together. Yet sometimes our most unshakable beliefs can transform into our most troubling uncertainties, and unwavering faith can become the gateway to revelations that reshape everything we thought we understood about ourselves and those closest to our hearts. An insignificant scrap of paper would serve as the initial piece in a cascade of events that Charlotte never could have anticipated. What started as a minor discrepancy, a question left hanging in the air, evolved into an expedition of revelations that would guide her through territories she never envisioned exploring. This narrative transcends simple tales of deception and honesty. It concerns the instant when we comprehend that we might not understand the individuals we cherish most as thoroughly as we believed. It involves uncovering that beneath recognizable expressions can lurk mysteries powerful enough to destabilize the strongest pillars of our reality. It addresses confronting the horrifying prospect that our complete existence might have been constructed upon ground far less stable than we had assumed. The challenge Charlotte was preparing to encounter represents one of humanity's most widespread and terrifying dilemmas. How to respond when reality proves to be entirely different from our understanding? How should we react upon discovering that we perhaps don't truly comprehend the person we trust above all others? This narrative examines those fears that haunt anyone who has genuinely loved, who has constructed their existence around a family unit, who has believed they discovered their perfect match. It concerns the moment when the earth splits open beneath us and we realize we were treading on far more precarious ground than we had recognized. It involves the bravery required to pursue truth, even when we suspect it might demolish everything we hold dear. Prepare yourself to witness an emotionally intense journey, where every uncovered hint spawns fresh inquiries, where each discovered answer creates countless new mysteries, and where an ordinary woman becomes compelled to investigate her own existence. This represents Charlotte's experience, yet it could equally describe anyone who has placed complete trust in another, who has constructed mutual aspirations, who has believed they found their sanctuary in this world. What would your response be if you started suspecting that everything you accept as genuine in your life might be nothing more than an expertly crafted illusion? Charlotte stands on the brink of learning that certain truths possess such power. They can simultaneously devastate and emancipate, and that occasionally we must sacrifice everything we believe we possess to understand who we truly are. The persistent question remains: would you possess the courage to pursue answers that could transform your life permanently? Charlotte had always maintained that she possessed the formula for marital bliss. 2 decades alongside Michael served as living testimony that authentic love continued to flourish in this era of throwaway relationships. She observed other neighborhood women constantly criticizing their spouses and experienced a quiet sense of superiority. Her family stood apart, perhaps even exceptional. Michael transcended the role of mere spouse. He served as her closest companion, her trusted advisor, her refuge during life's turbulent periods. Their suburban residence, featuring its meticulous maintained garden and corridors echoing with joy, appeared to be an ideal sanctuary. Every space within that dwelling radiated peace, from the kitchen where they shared morning meal preparation to the family room where they embraced while watching films. They seemed to have established their own private Eden, removed from the complexities of the external world. Their daily patterns possessed an almost melodic quality, a coordinated performance that only genuinely bonded couples could achieve. Each Monday morning, he would pack his luggage for yet another work journey, always displaying that playful grin that had captivated her 20 years earlier. "I'll long for you," he would declare, placing a tender kiss on her forehead with sincere emotion, and Charlotte's pulse would quicken as though experiencing it for the first time. Their adolescent children, Asher and Mia, equally cherished their father. He consistently returned bearing presents and amusing tales from the locations he had visited. Michael possessed the talent for converting each homecoming into a minor celebration, delivering local confections, amusing trinkets that provoked laughter, and most importantly, that infectious enthusiasm of someone delighted to be home. It seemed impossible not to adore such a man, who consistently demonstrated how much family meant to him. Charlotte regarded herself as the most fortunate woman alive for discovering someone so committed and caring. Michael's departures, rather than creating problems, appeared to enhance their relationship further. Charlotte came to appreciate every shared moment, each family meal, each evening conversation after the children retired. She utilized his absence to pursue neglected interests, reorganize their home, and arrange surprises for his return. Each temporary separation seemed to revitalize their passion, maintaining that delightful feeling of yearning and reunion. Friends frequently remarked how they resembled young lovers despite their lengthy union. "You demonstrate that true love exists," their neighbor would comment, and Charlotte would smile knowingly. That understanding, that connection, that flawless synchronization, everything felt genuine, tangible, indisputable. Charlotte never challenged the erratic schedules or the telephone calls he took in separate rooms. Trust formed the cornerstone of everything, didn't it? Deception simply had no place in the vocabulary of this home constructed with such devotion and commitment. When Michael murmured, "I must answer this, darling," and departed with his mobile phone, she would simply acknowledge with understanding. After all, professional obligations are professional obligations, and she understood how rigorous and unpredictable the commercial sales industry could be. Sometimes he arrived home late, sometimes he needed to depart before dawn to catch flights, sometimes he remained unreachable for days due to crucial meetings. However, Charlotte interpreted all this as the cost they paid for maintaining a comfortable and secure lifestyle. What mattered was that ultimately, he always returned home, always came back to her. The neighbors regularly complimented Michael's involvement as a father despite his hectic schedule. He never missed significant school events, always managed to be present during truly important moments. Asher and Mia took pride in sharing stories about their father's travels with friends, describing the fascinating places he experienced and the special gifts he brought home. "My father is incredible," Mia would often say, and Charlotte felt her heart swell with pride. Finding a man who could balance professional success with family responsibilities so skillfully wasn't easy. Michael appeared destined for fatherhood and marriage, and she felt blessed to have been selected to share life with someone so remarkable. It seemed as though fate had worked in their favor, bringing together two souls created for each other. Their residence served as the central gathering place for extended family, where everyone assembled during holidays and special occasions. Charlotte enjoyed hosting, loved seeing the table filled with guests, loved hearing laughter resonating through the dining area. Michael invariably became the focal point, recounting his travel experiences with that engaging manner he possessed for transforming any story into entertainment. He understood better than anyone how to make people feel valued, remembered every nephew's birthday, inquired about each brother-in-law's career, complimented the dishes brought by sisters-in-law. "How fortunate Charlotte is," the family women would whisper, and she silently agreed, savoring that wonderful sensation of being envied for all the right reasons. After all, how many women could claim to have such a husband, a man admired by everyone, respected, beloved, a genuine model of integrity and dedication? Yet life possesses a unique method of teaching us that appearances can be deceiving, and that the most solid foundations can conceal fractures invisible to those who love. Charlotte was about to discover that the mystery of her perfect marriage contained shadows she never imagined existed. Sometimes what we consider our greatest certainty can become our most troubling dilemma, and blind faith can be the initial step toward a devastating fall. On that bright Saturday, while organizing clothes for washing, Charlotte had no idea that her life was about to change direction completely. A simple routine action was about to expose the first loose thread of a scheme she never dreamed existed, and that would forever alter her understanding of love, truth, and betrayal. It was an ordinary Saturday when Charlotte chose to prepare Michael's clothing for the laundry service. She always approached this task with attention, examining pockets before placing items in the hamper, ensuring nothing valuable would be lost during the process. This automatic action, performed countless times throughout the years, represented another quiet expression of love and consideration. Michael had returned the previous evening from another business expedition, weary as usual, and she wanted him to awaken to everything organized and fresh. This exemplified the flawless dynamic of their family, each member caring for others through small actions that created significant impact. Charlotte smiled while sorting the shirts, reflecting on her good fortune to have a husband who always returned home, always came back to her. Nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to discover in that pocket of the charcoal suit, his preferred garment from his wardrobe. Her fingertips encountered a wrinkled paper at the bottom of the interior pocket, and she extracted it without much concern. It was merely a receipt, one of those small items we collect unconsciously during our busy daily routines. But when her gaze gaze concentrated on the details printed on that seemingly unimportant piece of paper. Something unusual captured her attention. The establishment name read Little Wonders Toys, situated in a city she was certain wasn't part of Michael's recent trip schedule. He had mentioned visiting Indianapolis and Pittsburgh, but this receipt originated from Kansas City, a location he had never referenced in his work-related discussions. Charlotte experienced an uncomfortable sensation in her stomach, the kind that emerges when something feels wrong, but she attempted to dismiss the strange feeling. There had to be a reasonable explanation. There always was. Perhaps he had made an unplanned stop. Perhaps he had altered his route for some professional reason he forgot to mention. What truly puzzled her was the cost and description of the purchased item. It was an expensive present, very costly by their standards when it came to gifts for godchildren or nephews. A limited edition collectible doll, designed specifically for 15-year-old girls, according to the detailed description on the receipt. Charlotte knew all the birthdays within their extended family, all their friends' children, all the significant dates that Michael typically acknowledged with gifts. There was no 15-year-old girl in their social network who had a birthday during that period of the year. She mentally reviewed. The nieces were either younger or older. Their friends' daughters didn't match the profile, and Michael's godchildren were all boys. Why would he purchase such a specific and expensive gift for someone she didn't recognize, and why hadn't he mentioned anything about it? The mystery behind that receipt began to disturb her more than she cared to admit. Charlotte remained in the laundry room for several minutes, holding that paper as if it might burn her fingers. Countless explanations raced through her mind, each one more strained than the last. Perhaps it was a gift for some important client. Perhaps it was for a new business partner's daughter. Perhaps it was an early Christmas purchase. But why such a specific doll? Why in a city that wasn't on his itinerary? Why hadn't he discussed this special purchase? Charlotte always knew about all the gifts Michael gave to other people. He enjoyed asking her opinion, showing what he had selected, sharing with her these small pleasures of making someone happy. It was unusual, very unusual, for him to have made such a significant purchase without mentioning a single word. That silence began to sound like deception through omission, and that made her profoundly uncomfortable. When Michael awakened, Charlotte was in the kitchen preparing breakfast with the receipt carefully hidden in the table drawer. She observed him closely while he stretched and smiled at her, giving her the customary morning kiss. "Did you rest well, love?" she asked, attempting to sound natural, but her eyes searched for some indication, some clue in his expression. Michael appeared normal, relaxed, happy to be home as he always was after trips. He spoke about the meeting in Indianapolis, about the traffic in Pittsburgh, about how eager he was to spend the weekend with family. Not a word about Kansas City, no mention of gifts purchased, no spontaneous explanation that could calm Charlotte's anxious heart. She wanted to ask directly, but something prevented her, perhaps fear of the answer, perhaps hope that everything was just a misunderstanding. The day proceeded with strange normalcy, with Michael playing with the children in the backyard and Charlotte attempting to focus on household activities. But that receipt seemed to cry out from inside the drawer, demanding an explanation that never came. During family lunch, she watched every gesture of her husband, every word, every expression, searching for signs that something was different. But Michael was exactly as always, affectionate, present, amusing, telling stories that made Asher and Mia laugh heartily. It was impossible to imagine that man could be concealing something important from her. However, the receipt remained there, real and inexplicable, like a small time bomb ticking in the depths of her mind. Charlotte found herself wondering if she really knew the man she had shared a bed with for 20 years, and this doubt frightened her more than any betrayal her imagination could conjure. That evening, while Michael slept soundly beside her, Charlotte lay awake staring at the ceiling and sensing that something fundamental had shifted in her life. It wasn't just the receipt, it was the feeling that a door had opened to a world of possibilities she preferred not to explore. For the first time in 20 years, she questioned whether she really knew all the secrets of the man she loved. For the first time, a seed of mistrust was planted in her heart, and she knew that once it sprouted, it would be impossible to ignore. The dilemma was just beginning, and Charlotte sensed that that small crumpled paper was just the tip of an iceberg much larger and more dangerous than she could imagine. Something told her that her perfect life was about to reveal cracks she had never noticed before, and that the truth, when it finally emerged, would be much more complex than a simple receipt forgotten in a pocket. That cursed receipt refused to leave Charlotte's thoughts like an annoying melody that lodges in the mind and won't depart. She attempted to dismiss it, attempted to rationalize it, attempted to discover countless innocent explanations for that mysterious purchase, but the unease only intensified. It was as if a door had opened in her consciousness, revealing a dark hallway she had never noticed before. The woman who had always trusted her husband without question now found herself scrutinizing every detail, every story, every justification he provided for his absences. The mystery of that gift purchased in an inexplicable city had planted a seed of suspicion that sprouted rapidly, converting her tranquility into persistent anxiety. Charlotte discovered that once trust is damaged, it's impossible to pretend nothing has happened. Doubt has its own existence and spreads like weeds. It was on a Tuesday afternoon, while Michael was on another of his trips, that Charlotte made a decision that would alter everything. Sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee growing cold between her hands, she opened the laptop and began an investigation she never imagined conducting. First, it was the credit card statements, those documents she had always signed without questioning, trusting completely in her husband's honesty. Each line became a clue, each expense a question without an answer. There were charges in cities that didn't match the work itineraries he described, hotels in residential neighborhoods instead of commercial centers, family restaurants instead of business meeting locations. It was as if she were reading about a stranger's life, not the man who had shared a bed with her for 2 decades. With each discovery, her heart accelerated and her hands trembled slightly over the keyboard. The car's GPS became her greatest ally and worst enemy simultaneously. Michael, always so careful with everything, sometimes forgot to turn off the tracking, and Charlotte learned to access the location history with the skill of a private detective. The routes drawn on the screen told a completely different story from what he narrated over the phone during his business trips. Instead of going straight to commercial destinations, the car made strange detours, stopped at residential addresses for hours, spent nights in places that had nothing to do with work. Charlotte printed some maps and spread them over the table, tracing with red pen the real paths Michael took. The result was a map of lies as clear as it was painful, each red line representing a betrayal of the trust she placed in him. It was impossible to deny. There was a pattern, a second life she completely unknown. The mysterious monthly payments were the most disturbing discovery of all. Navigating through bank statements with the meticulousness of an auditor, Charlotte found automatic debits that left her breathless. A private school she had never heard of, a family health plan for people she didn't know, even a supermarket account in a distant city. They were recurring, organized, systematic expenses. They weren't passing adventures or errors in judgment. It was a parallel family being supported with money she thought was being invested in her children's future. Asher and Mia studied in public school because it was important to save for college, while other children somewhere attended expensive private institutions. The hypocrisy of the situation made her nauseous, and she had to lean on the kitchen sink to avoid fainting. How could he look her in the eyes and talk about domestic economy, about plans for the future, about the importance of saving for the family? Charlotte transformed into a version of herself she didn't recognize, a woman obsessed with details, who checked every invoice, every receipt, every small expense that could reveal more pieces of this macabre puzzle. She created spreadsheets on the computer, cross-referencing dates, values, and locations with the precision of a professional investigator. Each new evidence was cataloged, each discovered lie was documented. It was no longer just about the toy store receipt. It was about years of deception, about a double life built with such care that she wondered if she had ever really known the man she married. The nights became endless, with Charlotte awake until late hours, navigating through statements and maps, looking for more clues, more confirmations of what she already knew in her heart. The dilemma was no longer whether Michael was lying, but for how long and to what extent. The most shocking discovery came on a rainy Thursday, when Charlotte found proof of regular bank transfers to an account she didn't know. They weren't small amounts, they were significant sums, sent religiously every month like a pension or allowance. The name on the account was feminine, and Charlotte felt the world spin around her when she realized those transfers had been happening for more than 15 years. 15 years, since when Asher was just a baby, since when she was still breastfeeding and dreaming of the perfect future they would build together. Michael wasn't just having an affair. He had been supporting a second family for more than a decade, using money that should guarantee the legitimate children's future. The betrayal wasn't just emotional or physical. It was financial, moral, existential. It was the complete denial of everything she believed about the man she loved and about the life they built together. That night, when Michael called from his business trip to say goodnight, Charlotte could barely keep her voice steady. He talked about missing her, about how he could barely wait to come home, about how he loved their family. Each word sounded like a stab, each declaration of love like a cruel lie. Charlotte knew she had reached the limit of her silent investigation. She had enough evidence to confront him, to demand explanations, to end that farce once and for all. But she also knew that once she opened that Pandora's box, there would be no turning back. The perfect life she knew was about to crumble, and she needed to decide if she was ready to face the naked truth. The map of lies was complete, and now she needed to decide which destination to follow. Whether she would continue pretending she knew nothing, or if she would have the courage to confront the man who had betrayed not just her heart, but the entire structure of her existence. The location was burned into Charlotte's memory like a painful brand. Acacia Street, 247, Garden Europe neighborhood. It was one of the addresses that appeared most frequently on Michael's GPS, always on weekends when he claimed to be attending workshops or special training. On that Saturday morning, while he left home with his usual excuse, Charlotte felt that the moment of truth had arrived. She could no longer live with that secret corroding her soul, could no longer pretend she believed the lies he told with such naturalness. She wore discreet clothes, took the car keys, and headed to the address that had become an obsession. Her heart beat so hard she could hear it echoing in her ears, but the need to know the truth was greater than the fear of what she might find. It was as if her entire life depended on that moment, on that courageous decision to face reality head-on. Acacia Street was exactly as Charlotte had imagined, a middle-class neighborhood with well-maintained houses and flowered gardens, very similar to hers. She parked a few blocks away and walked slowly, trying to control her breathing and nerves that seemed on edge. Number 247 was a yellow house with a white gate, identical in style to the house where she lived with Michael and the children. The irony of the situation hit her like a punch to the stomach. He had recreated exactly the same environment, the same family atmosphere, as if it were possible to duplicate a life and live two parallel realities without consequences. Charlotte hid behind a tree on the opposite sidewalk, feeling ridiculous for being there, but unable to leave without discovering the truth. Each minute that passed seemed like an eternity, and she wondered if she would have enough courage to face what she was about to see. At 10:30 in the morning, Michael's familiar car turned the corner and parked in the yellow house's garage. Charlotte felt her legs go weak and had to lean on the tree trunk to avoid falling. It was real. Everything was real. They weren't just numbers on bank statements or points on GPS. It was a concrete, palpable life happening right there in front of her. She saw Michael get out of the car with the same naturalness of someone arriving home after a day of work, carrying grocery bags and a bouquet of flowers. The same man who the night before had kissed her forehead and whispered, "I love you," in her ear, now walked toward another door, another home, another family. The pain Charlotte felt at that moment was physical, as if someone were tearing pieces of her heart with bare hands. It was the materialization of all her worst nightmares, the confirmation that her entire life had been a carefully orchestrated lie. The house door opened before Michael even touched the doorbell, and Charlotte saw a brunette woman, beautiful, approximately her age, receive him with a radiant smile and a passionate kiss. It wasn't a young adventurer or a passing passion. It was a mature, established woman who clearly waited for him with the same anxiety Charlotte used to have when he returned from trips. The scene was a perfect copy of what happened in her own house, as if Michael had a memorized script that he repeated on two different stages. Charlotte watched, hypnotized by the horror of the situation, as he handed the flowers to the woman and hugged her with genuine affection. It was impossible to fake that intimacy, that complicity. It was obvious they had a solid relationship built over years. The dilemma was no longer about an eventual betrayal, but about a complete double life, with love, commitment, and family on both sides. It was when the children appeared that Charlotte felt the world completely crumble. A boy of about 12 years and a girl who seemed to be 15, exactly the age to receive that expensive doll that had generated the entire investigation. The two children ran to Michael shouting, "Dad! Dad!" with the same joy and spontaneity that Asher and Mia showed when he arrived home. Charlotte saw the man she loved kneel to hug those children, saw the genuine smile on his face, saw how he lifted them in the air and spun with them, exactly as he did with his own children. It was a complete, functional, happy family. It wasn't an extramarital affair. It was an entire second life. The girl had Michael's same eyes. The boy had the same mischievous smile. There was no doubt they were his children, his real children, raised and loved with the same dedication he showed for Asher and Mia. Charlotte had to cover her mouth with her hands to muffle the scream of despair that wanted to come out of her throat. The family scene that unfolded before her eyes was simultaneously beautiful and terrifying. Michael played in the garden with the children while the woman prepared lunch, exactly as happened in her house on weekends. It was the same dynamic, the same affectionate gestures, the same atmosphere of a united and happy family. Charlotte realized she wasn't just the other, she was one of two, both living the same illusion, both believing to be the only one, the special one, the true one. For 15 years, Michael had managed to maintain two parallel lives, two homes, two families, dividing his time and love in a way that neither of them suspected the other's existence. It was such an elaborate, well-planned betrayal that it was almost impressive in its cruelty. Charlotte wondered how many lies he had told, how many excuses he had invented, how many workshops and business trips were actually weekends with the other family. With trembling hands, Charlotte took a discreet photo with her cell phone. Michael in the garden, embraced with the woman and the two children, all smiling at the camera the girl was holding. It was the definitive proof, the irrefutable evidence that her life had been a farce. In that image was everything she needed to know. He wasn't just an unfaithful husband. He was a man capable of living living two completely separate lives, of loving two women, of raising 4 children, of maintaining 2 houses, 2 routines, 2 parallel worlds. Charlotte put away her cell phone and walked away from there with staggering steps, feeling like a sleepwalker in a nightmare from which she couldn't wake up. She knew that night, when Michael returned home with his usual excuse about the workshop, she would have to confront him with that photo. She knew that her life, as she knew it, was coming to an end, and that the secret she discovered would forever change not only her destiny, but that of everyone involved in that cruel and elaborate plot. That evening, when Michael arrived home with his customary smile and the practice story about the workshop, Charlotte was seated in the living room with the printed photograph on the coffee table. She had spent hours staring at that image, attempting to process the magnitude of the betrayal she had uncovered. It wasn't just 20 years of marriage that had been a lie. It was 20 years of life, of shared dreams, of plans for the future, of absolute trust. When Michael saw the photo, his face instantly paled, and for the first time in 2 decades, he was speechless. There was no way to deny it, no way to invent another excuse, no way to transform that evidence into another convincing story. The secret he had guarded so carefully for 15 years was there, exposed on the living room table, destroying in seconds the perfect facade he had built. Charlotte simply said, "Explain this," and her voice sounded colder than she ever imagined being capable of. Michael's confession was even more devastating than Charlotte expected. He didn't deny, didn't try to minimize, didn't invent excuses. He simply broke down and told everything. The other woman was named Olivia. They met at a business fair 15 years ago, and what started as an affair transformed into a complete second family. He loved both, supported both, divided his time between both, living a double life that required military logistics to function. The children of the other family, Ryder and Luna, were really his, and he was present in their lives as much as in Asher and Mia's. Charlotte heard every word with a mixture of horror and fascination, realizing how he had managed to maintain that farce for so long. Each business trip was carefully planned to include time with Olivia and the children. Each extended holiday was divided between the two families. Each lie was built upon other lies in a complex architecture of deception. What shocked Charlotte most was discovering that she wasn't alone in her ignorance. Olivia also didn't know about her and the children's existence. Michael had told the other woman that he was divorced, that he had a difficult ex-wife who didn't allow him to talk about the children from the first marriage. It was a mirrored lie, a double betrayal that victimized both women equally and cruelly. Charlotte realized that Olivia had also been deceived, had also built her life based on a farce, had also raised children believing they had a dedicated father and a solid relationship. The anger Charlotte felt wasn't just for the personal betrayal, but for the systematic cruelty of a man capable of deceiving 2 entire families for more than a decade. It was impossible to process the coldness necessary to maintain that double life, the capacity to lie looking into eyes, to make promises knowing they were false. The revelation didn't stop there. Like an avalanche, other secrets began to come to light. Charlotte's brother-in-law Paul, Michael's brother and his best friend since adolescence, knew everything. Not only did he know, but he had actively helped maintain the farce, providing alibis, covering absences, even personally knowing Olivia and the children. When Charlotte confronted Paul, demanding explanations about how he could participate in that lie for so many years, he tried to justify himself, saying it wasn't his business, that it was a very complicated dilemma, that he didn't want to destroy the family. The discovery that her own brother-in-law, a man she considered a brother, had been an accomplice to that betrayal was almost as painful as discovering Michael's double life. Charlotte realized she hadn't just been deceived by her husband, but by an entire network of people who knew the truth and chose to protect the lie. The impact on the extended family was devastating and immediate. Charlotte's sister, married to Paul, found herself in the middle of a marital crisis when she discovered her husband had lied to her for years, omitting crucial information about her brother-in-law. Charlotte's parents, who adored Michael and considered him the perfect son-in-law, were shocked to discover that the man they constantly praised had deceived their daughter so elaborately. The children, Asher and Mia, were confused and hurt to discover they had half-siblings they never knew, that the father they idolized had built a second family in secret. It was as if a bomb had exploded in the center of their lives, and the shrapnel hit all the people they loved. The domino effect of Michael's betrayal wasn't limited to the marriage. It destroyed relationships, broke trusts, questioned the foundation of everything they believed about family and loyalty. Financially, Charlotte discovered she was in an even more complex trap than than she imagined. Michael had been strategic not only emotionally, but also economically. A significant part of the couple's assets were in the name of shell companies he controlled, other properties were registered in Olivia's name, and even the house where Charlotte lived had a mortgage she was unaware of. The retirement plans, the savings for the children's college, the investments she thought existed, everything had been diverted over the years to sustain Michael's double life. Charlotte found herself not only emotionally betrayed, but also financially robbed, discovering that the future she imagined for her children had been compromised to fund her husband's secrets. It was a betrayal that went far beyond the heart. It was a systematic theft of the resources that should guarantee the legitimate family's security. The most surprising turn came when Charlotte decided to personally seek out Olivia. She expected to find an arrogant woman, a conscious accomplice to the betrayal, but encountered someone as much a victim as herself. Olivia had also recently discovered the truth through an accidental call from Asher to Michael's cell phone when the boy was trying to talk to his father and dialed the wrong number. The two women met at a cafe, initially tense and distrustful, but soon realized they were allies in a fight against the same enemy. Olivia had also been deceived about the financial situation, also believed Michael was divorced, had also built her life based on lies. Together, they began to assemble an even more complex puzzle, discovering that Michael had lied to both about practically everything. It was strange and liberating at the same time. Two betrayed women joining forces to seek justice, not for revenge, but for their children's rights, and for the future that had been stolen from them through years of elaborate lies and systematic betrayals. Following weeks of emotional turmoil, Charlotte awakened one Tuesday morning with a clarity she hadn't experienced in months. It was as if the tempest that had ravaged her life had finally subsided, leaving behind not just wreckage, but also clear ground where she could construct something new. The devoted and dependent woman she thought she was had perished on that sidewalk on Acacia Street, and in her place was born someone she was still getting to know, a stronger, more determined version, more aware of her own worth. The secret that had corroded her for so long now transformed into fuel for a transformation she never imagined possible. For the first time in 20 years, Charlotte wasn't defining her identity through her relationship with Michael, and this freedom, however frightening, was also deeply liberating. It was the end of an era, but also the beginning of something that promised to be much more authentic. The decision to hire a lawyer wasn't motivated by revenge, but by justice, a distinction Charlotte made sure to clarify for herself and everyone around her. She didn't want to destroy Michael out of anger or resentment. She wanted to protect her children and ensure they had the future they deserved, regardless of their father's selfish choices. The lawyer, Theodore, was impressed with the organization of evidence Charlotte had collected during her silent investigation. Each statement, each receipt, each photo was a piece of a legal puzzle that made her case practically irrefutable. "Mrs. Charlotte," he said, "I rarely see someone so prepared for such a battle. You have everything you need to guarantee your rights." It was strange to be praised for her ability to investigate her own betrayal, but Charlotte felt proud of the determined woman she had become. The dilemma was no longer about saving the marriage, but about building a dignified future for her and her children. Returning to the job market was one of the biggest challenges and, simultaneously, one of Charlotte's greatest victories. She had abandoned her accounting career 15 years ago to dedicate herself entirely to the family, believing she was making the right choice for everyone. Now at 45, she needed to start over in an area that had changed drastically, with technology she didn't know and a much more competitive market. The first months were hard. She studied until late hours to update herself, took online courses, faced interviews where she needed to explain the time lost in her resume. But each small conquest, each yes she received, each new knowledge acquired was proof that she was capable of much more than she imagined. When she finally got a job at a medium-sized company, Charlotte cried, not from sadness but from pride for having proven to herself that she could be independent. It was the first time in decades that she had a professional identity of her own, separate from her role as wife and mother. The rebuilding process wasn't just personal. Charlotte discovered that her story inspired other women going through similar situations. Without planning, she became a kind of informal mentor for friends and acquaintances facing marital dilemmas, betrayals, or simply the need to restart their lives. Her strength, determination, and ability to transform pain into purpose served as an example for women who felt lost in their own problematic relationships. "How did you manage?" they asked, and Charlotte always replied, "I stopped being afraid of the truth and started being afraid of living a lie." She organized an informal support group that met bi-weekly, where women shared their their experiences and strengthened each other. It was gratifying to realize that her pain had transformed into a tool to help other people, that her suffering hadn't been in vain if it could prevent other women from going through the same in silence. The relationship with the children, Asher and Mia, required special care throughout the process. Charlotte made sure to be honest with them, explaining the situation appropriately for their ages without demonizing their father, but also without hiding the gravity of the lies he had told. It was a delicate balance between protecting them from pain and preparing them for reality. Asher, at 17, was initially revolted but gradually understood that his mother had made the right choice in seeking the truth. Mia, younger, took longer to process but found in her mother's strength an example of how to face adversities. Charlotte established a new family dynamic where honesty was absolute priority, where secrets had no place, where each family member could express their feelings without fear of judgment. It was a numerically smaller family, but infinitely more emotionally solid. The children learned that sometimes it's necessary to break something that seems perfect to build something that really is true. The unexpected partnership with Olivia proved to be one of the most interesting parts of the entire process. The two women, initially united only by the betrayal they suffered, developed a genuine friendship based on mutual respect and the fight for justice. Together, they managed to track all the assets Michael had hidden, all the accounts he kept secret, all the investments he had made using money from both families. Olivia proved to be a valuable ally with knowledge that complemented Charlotte's, and together they formed a formidable team in the search for their rights. "We are stronger together than he ever was alone," Olivia said in one of their conversations, and Charlotte completely agreed. It was ironic that Michael's betrayal had resulted in such a powerful alliance between his victims. The two women managed not only to recover a significant part of the diverted resources, but also to establish a pension agreement that guaranteed the future of the 4 children involved in the situation. As for Michael, the man who for 15 years managed to maintain 2 parallel lives with almost military mastery, he saw his world completely crumble when his secrets came to light. He lost both families at once, was left alone in a small apartment he could barely afford with his reduced salary after the pensions. The company where he worked fired him when the scandal became public, as his reputation as a commercial representative was compromised. After all, how to trust someone capable of lying so strongly for so long? His own children, both Asher and Mia, as well as Ryder and Luna, refused to speak with him, ashamed of the lies and betrayals they discovered. Michael tried to rebuild relationships, but trust, once broken so spectacularly, proved impossible to restore. He became a lonely man, carrying the weight of his selfish choices, serving as a living example that every lie has an expiration date and every betrayal charges its price. Ironically, the man who tried to have everything ended up losing absolutely everything, discovering too late that emotional greed has devastating consequences. The case resolution didn't bring a happy ending in the traditional sense of the word, but brought something much more valuable: the conquest of an authentic life. Charlotte was no longer living a lie disguised as perfection. She was building a reality based on truth, however imperfect it might be. She had a job that fulfilled her, children who respected her, true friendships, and mainly, an honest relationship with herself. There were no more secrets corroding her peace, no more dilemmas about what was real or false in her life. For the first time in decades, Charlotte was the sole architect of her own future. She had learned that sometimes it's necessary to lose everything we think we have to discover everything we really are. The woman who emerged from the ruins of her marriage was stronger, wiser, and infinitely freer than the one who lived 20 years in a family built on lies. And this discovery by itself was worth all the pain she had faced to get there. Charlotte's journey teaches us a profound lesson about the resilience that exists within each of us, even when we don't know it's there. How many times in life do we settle into situations that seem perfect on the surface, but hide deep cracks we prefer not to see? Charlotte lived 20 years in a family she believed to be ideal, sustained by lies so well constructed they seemed like absolute truths. But it was precisely when her world crumbled that she discovered what she was really capable of. The fragile and dependent woman she thought she was gave way to a determined warrior who not only survived the storm, but emerged from it stronger and wiser. Her journey shows us that sometimes it's necessary to lose everything we think we have to discover everything we really are, and that truth, however painful it may be, will always be more liberating than the most beautiful of lies. What's most impressive about Charlotte's trajectory is how she transformed her pain into purpose, her betrayal into strength to help other women. She could have let herself be consumed by bitterness, could have become a resentful person closed off to love. Instead, she chose to use use her experience to inspire and support other people going through similar dilemmas. This teaches us that our greatest defeats can become our greatest victories, as long as we have the courage to face reality head-on and transform our suffering into wisdom. Charlotte proved that it's possible to rebuild an authentic life over the rubble of an existence based on secrets and lies, and that independence conquered through pain is worth much more than security built on illusion. The unexpected alliance between Charlotte and Olivia also teaches us something fundamental about how the most unlikely circumstances can generate the most powerful connections. Two women who could have become enemies chose to unite against the injustice they suffered, proving that female solidarity can be a transformative force. They understood that the real betrayal wasn't in each other's existence, but in the elaborate lies of a man who played with the feelings and future of two entire families. Together, they managed not only to seek justice for themselves, but also to guarantee a better future for their children. This partnership shows us that sometimes our greatest allies can emerge from the most unexpected places, and that the union of people with similar purposes can move mountains that seemed insurmountable. Michael's fate serves as a powerful reminder that every lie has an expiration date and every betrayal charges its price. For 15 years, he managed to maintain a double life with almost military precision, believing he could have the best of both worlds indefinitely. But truth always finds a way to come to light, and when that happens, the consequences can be devastating. He lost not only two families, but also his reputation, his job, and the respect of everyone who knew him. His story teaches us that the best-kept secret can become our greatest ruin, and that emotional greed, wanting to have everything without assuming responsibilities, inevitably leads to losing everything. He's a living example that our choices have consequences, and that trying to build happiness over others' unhappiness is a guaranteed recipe for failure. This story shows that what is hidden always comes to light, and that truth, however hard it may seem, is what liberates. Charlotte discovered that living an authentic life, even if imperfect, is infinitely better than living a perfect lie. She learned that the strength we need to face life's storms already exists within us, waiting only for the right moment to manifest. If this story made you reflect on the importance of honesty in relationships, on the courage necessary to seek truth, or on how it's possible to start over even when everything seems lost, share this video. Leave your like if you believe every person deserves to live a life based on truth, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that touch the heart and make us think. Sometimes, the right message arrives at the exact time, and maybe this story is exactly what someone you know needs to hear today.